unless you happen to be a contractor yourself and understand all that. How do you deal with that?
Well, there's a couple of things you could do. Obviously, you're going to try to figure out on your own what each bid means, get them in writing. If you've chosen somebody, at that point, I wouldn't hesitate to say, all right, this one's much less money than yours, but I really want to go with you, but you've got to try to, try to meet this and show it to them. And if they show, well, look, that's not exactly the same. I'm providing a higher quality material. Here's the difference. At that point, if you have someone who you want to work with and trust, show them the other bids and let them explain it to you.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like good advice.
Yep.
One of the other things I think that came up very recently, since FEMA moved in right away, apparently another scam was that people were appearing at the door of those houses and said, "Hi, I'm from FEMA," but actually they weren't.
Ask for identification.
Right.
Ask for, even with the registration, you want to see the registration card. Don't always just assume because somebody gives you a number that it's a valid registration. In fact, Massachusetts, the registration number is 6 digits beginning with a 1. Rhode Island doesn't have that difference, but anybody can go get a card made. But again, like David said earlier, look on the website, see if you have a registered contractor.
And see if there are any complaints filed against them so that you know who you're dealing with.
Exactly. There's information on the website that will...
So you close your door and say, just give me that number and I'll let you know later whether or not I want you to come in?
Yeah.
Right.
So FEMA has, the Federal Emergency Management Association has its own website. They have certain things that they're listing for you to be on the lookout for. And I think that they said that they are calling to schedule appointments, apart from the fact that there are plenty of mobile trucks out there where people are actually going into them and making sure that things are okay. But that's a very interesting thing that someone would rise up and say, hello, I'm a FEMA agent when I'm not.
No, they don't normally just knock on your door.
No, there would be too many.
Right.
Yeah.
Contract, there's still some stuff we didn't cover in that.
I'm sure there's let's do it.
You want to do some of that?
Let's do it.
All right. Payment schedule.
Yep.
Be very cautious. In fact, never do this if they ask for all the money up front.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second
Yeah, of
about
course.
that? Massachusetts requires that any vendor who's going to contract with someone for home improvement, the vendor cannot require more than 1/3 up front.
Right. That's
Okay?
what.
If they require more than that, red flag.
Right, a big red flag, because a little bit up front, no more than 1/3, and that might even be high. They have to pay for materials, perhaps they don't have an account to charge it, they should, but a percentage up front, okay. Never have a contract that requires you to pay the whole thing off before the work is completed.
And how about that, say, first, third payment? I've always been told, and we've always learned, that it's better to have it on the credit card. Does that mean even for that third deposit, are you better off not laying out the greenbacks, instead putting it on the credit card?
I would say on the credit card, because if there's a complaint or if, a dispute, you can issue a dispute through your company, which will investigate it. Pay by check. You don't want to pay by cash. It's more difficult to prove payment by cash. A check, you have a canceled check. Your credit card, you have your statement.
Even with a receipt for cash, there can be a dispute about that. If there's a check with a signature on the back and it's been cleared through your bank, you can prove payment. The credit card idea is a good idea because, and we talked about the changes in credit card laws, but the bottom line is there's still the ability to dispute a payment that's on your credit card if there's an issue. There's more to it than just that with the contract. So you have the payment schedule. The other thing I think that's really important is to spell out what happens if there are changes in the contract. In other words, I've asked for you to put in wallpaper, but now I've decided to change it to, say, paneling, which might be more expensive. Those changes should be in writing too. And any extras that you ask them to do, have it in writing so they can't come back to you and say, oh, that was much more than we agreed to. Just because you have a contract that lays out what you're doing initially, make sure any changes to that contract are in writing.
So would you then get to have another bid submitted by that contractor who's already begun the work?
No, usually you're in the middle of this already.
So it doesn't matter, just say, this is what I'm going to do, I want paneling, you think it's going to cost this, this is what I expect to pay more, and that's that, in writing.
And have it in writing.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. What about insurance? Do we care about whether or not our contractor has insurance?
Yeah, I said that earlier. If
and-
somebody's on your property,
Yes.
you want to know that that person has workers' compensation
Is that
insurance.
the only kind, though?
Maybe bonded.
Liability.
Yep, liability insurance as well.
Bonded?
I think if a contractor has been disciplined in the past, the state has the discretion, the contractors board has the discretion to make the contractor purchase a bond, which
Right.
is,
Yeah, and what that does
it's like a little
is,
insurance
i-
policy
if
almost.
the work, if you've paid for the work and it hasn't been completed, there's a process that we can talk about for that too, going to the contractor's registration board and filing a complaint, and they'll have a hearing, and we'll go through that whole process. But if they've been required to put up a bond and there is a bond, and it covers your job, that's a place where you can get money back as opposed to trying to chase somebody who may have no money.
When you're dealing with larger sums of money, like building a house, if you're mortgaging the house, you have a construction mortgage, the bank is very astute in going out and inspecting every time a check is issued to the contractor. The bank will require that the contractor has insurance, liability insurance, and workers' compensation insurance. And if the bank is not satisfied, the contractor doesn't get paid.
Right. And so you can act as your own bank in that situation and make sure they do their work.
Oh, so familiar from
Yes,
many years ago.
yes.
Right.
Other things about contracts that you think we should be aware of?
Well, let's say now you're in a dispute. The contract might have in it an arbitration clause, which is, as we've talked about in the past, the right to have an independent person hear the dispute rather than being forced to court. In any event, all contracts should and are subject to your being able to apply to the contractors board and say, here's a problem that's arisen. The payments were made, 75%, 20% of the work's done. And in the contract, you should also have a work schedule saying, I want the thing started by this date, substantial progress by another date, finished by the end date.
Is that part of the original contract?
I would put that in your
Should be.
original contract.
And payment upon completion
Right.
of particular phases
Yeah,
of work.
as you go through and you meet each phase, you get payments released. Now, the contractor starts the job, doesn't come back, and it's 6 months after the end date, never mind the progress dates, you file the complaint, I think it's $20 or $25.
Yes.
With the registration board, and they'll have a hearing, and they'll have, like an arbitrator and referee, hear your case and make an order, and he may order the contractor to refund your money to you, or whatever the correct remedy is. If the contractor doesn't follow the order of the registration board, it's sent to the Attorney General.
That's right.
And it can be prosecuted as a misdemeanor.
So it has to go through that channel first, rather than my getting very upset and going to the AG's office, the Better Business Bureau. It has to go through those channels
It
first?
should go through
It
that
should,
channel
okay.
first.
If you have 3 more offenses in 2 years, then you can actually be prosecuted for a felony.
Felony, right.
Yeah. So they got much more strict on these,
Right.
especially in Rhode Island, the recent changes in the law, because a couple people have been
There's
prison because of
been
it, yeah,
stories
yeah.
about scammers doing this stuff, and they've really cracked down, and they have a good process in place. You can use an attorney in the process. You do not need one. If you're comfortable presenting what your issues are, they'll just let you do it yourself. If you want an attorney to go with you, you can. Go ahead.
Another important part of every contract, it has to have a rescission clause in there. So every contract for home improvement, there should be a 3-day cancellation clause. It has to be delineated on the contract, and the 3 days should not include legal holidays and Sundays.
Right.
Okay, so there has to be a 3-day cancellation clause so that you can get out of the contract if you change your mind.
Right.
Does that mean I don't have to pay for the 3 days?
That's right, I wouldn't pay it until they,
Right.
yeah.
Till the
that's
rescission
right.
period's
Right.
gone by, because now if
Exactly.
you do rescind it, you're chasing that initial payment back.
A different document, a permit. Homeowner or the contractor has to be responsible for that?
That depends on the contract you enter into.
It should be in the contract. It should be in the contract who is responsible for the permit. Usually there's a nominal fee to get the permit, but I can tell you this, if a contractor says, oh, I don't bother with permits, red flag. Red flag.
I knew you were gonna say
Because
that.
when you go over to your town hall to get a permit, what is the town hall going to ask for?
Right.
From the contractor,
Yeah, the bond, the license number and the
Exactly.
contract and all of that.
and the registration
Right,
number.
right.
Yeah, so they're going to mandate that.
Right. And I think it's probably, if it were me, more appropriate for the contractor to go get the permit and make it part of the contract that they're going to do that. And as the homeowner,